Hey everybody, it's Marcella and Mary Sheila here. Happy January.
Hello, everybody. Happy.
Howdy. This is our all community talk for January. Before we get into the talk, why don't we begin the way I like to begin? So if you're in a place where it's safe and comfortable to do so, I want to invite you to just place one or both hands on your heart center. And let's just take 3 deep conscious breaths together. And while you're here with your hands on your heart, I want to invite you to just take one more breath. And on the out breath, just let your energy drop a little deeper down, out of your head and into your heart center. And see if you can actually feel or hear the beating of your heart. And just tune into this amazing organ that really has such profound loyalty to us. This heart that has been beating since even before we were born. And this heart that has its own wisdom, it has its own way of knowing, and it has its own genius, its own brilliance. And I want to just invite you to really enter into the space of your heart as a sanctuary, a beautiful refuge, a place where you can connect to the unconditional goodness, the goodness of who you are simply because you are. There's nothing to deserve. There's nothing to prove. There's nothing to strive for. Just simple goodness right here. Thank you so much. Oh, that feels good. So, Mary Sheila, do you want to mute for just a minute here? Oh, you are muted. There you are. You're okay. So, welcome everybody. It's not only a new year, but this is January of 2020, so it's a new decade. And boy, there's a lot of energy around the beginning of this new decade. And there's, for some of you, there's a lot of inspiration and a sense of forward vision and wow, like a lot of possibility. And for others, it might be a little bit more misgiving or apprehension. But wherever you are, I want to invite you. Oh, and by the way, of course, welcome, welcome, welcome to our new heroines. Oh, we're so glad you're here.
Hey, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yeah, welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, we love you, and we're really grateful to have you here with us. So whether you're brand new to this circle or whether you've been here for a while, I want to invite you to imagine that you can really draw a line in your kind of psychic timeline. So if you imagine your whole life as like this line, a timeline, to just really draw a line at this point, the beginning of this new decade, and to decide and to determine that whatever it is that brought you here, which, you know, could be like a lot of failed attempts to work with and heal your relationship with your body, your relationship with your food, as well as your inspiration. That whatever failures or setbacks or pitfalls, whatever has been hindering you, that you draw a line here and decide, set an intention that this is going to be a fresh start. So I want to invite you to just feel that in yourself for a moment before we go on, and from that place, I want to give you a sentence. 2020 is my year of ... 2020 is my year of what? And I want to invite you to post that on the Facebook group so that we can all see and witness what intention you are setting for 2020. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in just a minute. So again, for those of you who are new, in this academy, we are working with the archetypes of feminine power. And here in the winter season in the Northern Hemisphere, we are working with the archetype of the crone. And that is she who holds her blood to make wisdom. The crone is the wise elder. And she who, well, actually, this aspect of the crone, which I want to explore this month, is she who has stopped, she who has stopped caring what other people think about her. You might be one of these women, or you might know women in your life, like beautiful, amazing women of age, let's say, older women who really have gotten to the place in their lives where they are harvesting the fruition of a lifetime of self-knowledge and self-wisdom and inner work and power and beauty and so on. And, there's a certain point in this journey where we get to a certain age and we say, I'm done. Like, I don't care what people think about me. I'm just going to be myself. And I'm just going to live from my authenticity. So in thinking about that aspect of the crone, what I've come to recognize is that along with that kind of authenticity comes eccentricity. And the word eccentric is interesting. It literally means off center. So, and again, you probably know women like this, who they just dress the way they want to, or they just manifest themselves in some way that is, maybe it's a little outrageous. It's off center. It's outside of the box. It's liberated just simply by the virtue of time. And it's not beholden to social mores and social conventions in the way that, say, a maiden or a mother or a queen might be. So I want to play with this and talk a little bit more about this, in this talk. And then Mary, Sheila, and I are going to have a little conversation about dieting and how what we are doing in the academy differs from conventional practices of dieting. So I want to talk about the crone unleashing her genius. And of course, I'm talking about all of us and our wild inner crone and the genius that she holds. And I want to talk about this through a lens of two Sanskrit words that I want to give to you. And the first is sankalpa, Sankalpa, Sankalpa. And the second is Vikalpa, Vikalpa, Sankalpa Vikalpa. So some of you who are students of yoga, I believe these terms come out of the Bhagavad Gita from ancient India. Some of you might be going to yoga classes now where yoga teachers are talking about, like, what's your Sankalpa for the year, and then what's your Vikalpa. Sankalpa literally means intention, determination, vision, desire. Mary Sheila likes to talk about this as your big why. So I want to invite you, and in these next several weeks, we will explore this. What is your deepest intention for your life? And I know this is a big question. And for those of you who are new, you thought you were coming here just to heal your food, but I know you also are coming here because you want to go deeper than just simply weight loss or, dieting or what have you. So your Sankalpa. So Sankalpa is very intimately connected with vision. And whether you know it or not, whether you are consciously connected to it or not, you have a vision for your healing. If you didn't have that vision, you wouldn't be here. So some of you just recently said yes to joining the Academy. Some of you have said yes to rejoining the Academy. There's something that has kept you, that has gravitated you, so to speak. I don't know if that's the right choice of words, but there's been some kind of a gravitational pull for you to come into this circle. So I want to invite you to do some journaling on your own on what exactly that is. And I want you to drill down and get fearless and get specific. So you might think of yourself in another year or another 10 years. Where do you want to be? What do you want to be manifesting in your life? What do you want to be experiencing? How do you want to feel? The importance of a vision is several-fold. One is, and the bigger the vision, by the way, the more true this is, that when we really allow ourselves to step into our vision and take responsibility for it, it really isn't so much about whether the vision comes to fruition. So we can set a vision and then we can say, oh my God, ooh, I can't do that, or, oh, that might be too much. And I'm going to talk about all that in just a second. But when we set a vision, and when we set an especially big vision, and we're creating a big space of possibility for ourselves, really what that is about is setting our compass to true north. And saying, okay, this is the direction that I am choosing to move in. And I want to suggest to you that your Sankalpa, your vision, is actually sacred and it is ordained. It is coming from the sovereignty of your heart. And those of you who have been in the Academy for a long time, we speak a lot about ordination, right? We've had these conversations about what is your ordination. And for those of you who are new, we can talk about how you can access that material. But in the meantime, so going back to this notion of your ordination, your sacred vision, your calling, your Sankalpa, I want to invite you to really ground and center within yourself and pull that forward. The other piece about setting a big vision is that by nature of its bigness, it will pull out of you your Vikalpa. And Vikalpa literally means, I think it's difference is the literal translation. So we have a sankalpa, we have our direction. And then we have a vikalpa, which is all the ways that essentially we self-abandon around our vision. All the ways that we discredit our vision. And we say, oh, no, not me. I can't do something like that. It's too much. All the ways that we diminish it. All the ways that we neglect or abandon or what's the word, like check out. And this is a new word I want to introduce to you in a new term, all the ways that we domesticate. And we take this big vision and we try to put it into a little box. So our vision is often coming out of our zone of genius. So coming back again to this notion of the crone and her eccentricity. I'm going to take a sip here for a second. Okay. So coming back to this wild, eccentric crone, the woman who says, I don't give a flying fuck who, I don't care, I'm just going to live my life and be authentic. All right. And I'm just going to be myself, even with my eccentricity. So unleashing your genius. There is some element of you, some element of your brilliance that is uniquely yours, that is probably a little quirky, and it's probably a little bit outside of the zone of convention. And it's something that on a really deep level is part of what makes you brilliant. And there might be something about that fires up your vision. But what do we do, especially as women in this world? We take our genius, our kind of wild, unbridled genius, and we try to domesticate it. We try to bring it down. We try to shrink it down. And the most common way that we do this is by believing that we are too much or by believing that we are not enough. So when we get onto our call on Monday, we are going to explore the messages that you might be carrying from your childhood, messages that you've gotten from your parents, et cetera, about, don't be too much, or you're not enough, you should be more. I was telling Mary Sheila before we got on this call that I was thinking about myself this morning and I was remembering, oh Lord, I was remembering when I was in my 20s and I was working this corporate job. I was being like a little corporate girl. And I would put pantyhose and high heels on and like a little skirt, and I would go into an office and sit in the queue. I mean, you guys, can you imagine me doing? I mean, it's like, I was thinking about this, like, okay, I was being like a little, office worker, and I was like, who is this? Like, that was never me. And I remember in my early 30s, like I was working an office job, I was working in book publishing, and thinking like, the messages that I had gotten throughout college and in my 20s and so on was that like office work was like the pinnacle of success. And I think, for me growing up in the 1970s, it came from like watching the Mary Tyler Moore Show and Julia and That Girl and all these TV shows about like newly liberated women. So, at a certain point in my 30s, I just said like, wait a minute, whose idea of success is this? It's not mine. Like, this does not feel authentic to who I am. And thus began my journey where I left the corporate world and went to a monastery in Nova Scotia and shaved my head and put on monastic robes and started cooking for people. And that's, part of the journey that brought me right here to you. So what are the ways that you need to, or that you are feeling the calling to step outside of some box of domesticated expectation and domesticated standards that simply do not pertain to you, and they do not honor your genius. So, and how have you internalized this by believing you're too much, or you're not enough, or you should, or you shouldn't? So this is part of what we're going to explore in our call on Monday. And let me just check my notes here to see if there's anything else I wanted to say. Okay, I think that's going to be it for the moment. And Mary Sheila, so speaking of the box and getting out of the box, let's you and I talk a little bit. Let's bring everybody in on this conversation that we've been having about dieting.
Yeah, and it's so interesting in within that conversation. What I want to just say with regards to your story that you just shared, of being in the cubicle, but then also you said, but then I had this job that led to that job that led to that job, right? So it was just this journey.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I feel like I just want to say that our journey, our relationship with food is also a journey. And I think even just being in this group was maybe where there was a fork in the road. And we said, I'm going to take this different path down the journey. And I'm going to take this different path and see what happens. And in that, what we've left behind, or what we've said, okay, I'm not going to go down that anymore, is the diet, that mentality, which we are in a box of, yes, you can have this, no, you can have that, here's how many points you get, here's how much of that. So what is different when we say, okay, I'm not going to diet anymore? But it also doesn't mean that it's a free-for-all and I'm just going to eat anything and everything. It really boils down to making choices. It is that everyday moment of the choices that we make, from, just like what we choose to wear in the morning and get dressed, right? We have to make that choice. Then we have to make a choice of what are we going to have for breakfast? Are we going to have breakfast? What are we going to put in our morning beverage, right? Are we going to walk by the food that's in the break room? Or are we going to have some, right? So we're constantly navigating these choices. And, and if we're not on a diet, how are we holding that space? And you alluded to this before, of that deep desire, right? The sankappa, or that big why. What is that big why that is going to allow us to make choices that are going to be nourishing and, support us on the goals that we might have, that are weight loss? But we also know, and I just want to say, just with working with some of the women more recently in our group, when we have that aha and that awakening to, oh, I'm going to make these different choices. Like, I'm going to choose not to eat these grains and different foods because I'm in pain and I'm inflamed, and maybe this can help me. Or I'm going to make this choice to actually totally change my biochemistry on the inside and have my cells start working with ketones rather than glucose, because I'm going to see if that is going to help me with everything that I have going on in my body right now. So it really boils down to our choices. And I think and to me, it also boils down to mindfulness. And it boils down, in a sense, to that big why of how we want to feel, our deep desires, our longings, our wanting to not be struggling and stressing, and to just really be feeling good and, moving with ease, and maybe less pain and less weight and sleeping better and more energy. It's all those things kind of wrapped up in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love this piece about choices. And it's interesting. So if we take that whole phenomenon, the whole notion of making choices. So honoring ourselves and especially unleashing our genius, letting it out, cutting it loose. Then, when we really become, that's interesting. The word that's coming to my mind is fidelity for some reason. Like we cultivate fidelity to ourselves. We cultivate fidelity to who we actually are. And then the choices that we make are expressions of that, manifestations of that, so that, the chocolate chip cookies, like maybe we'll eat them at the family holiday party or whatever, but like they just don't have the same pull. I don't know if this is making any sense, but honoring that deep why, honoring the depth of who we really are.
Mm-hmm. Right. And along those same lines, and this was actually a conversation that I was having yesterday with somebody along those same lines, like the chocolate chip cookies. Somebody was saying that at work, somebody brought a whole the pink box of donuts. Mm-hmm. And it was an act of love, right? The person, there was actually just a fire in the wellness center where I work. So everyone had to move and it's been stressful. So somebody brought donuts as a gesture. And one of the doctors that I work with, she resisted all day because she just kept thinking, how am I going to feel? And I know I cannot just eat one. I know my brain is going to switch and I'm just going to want to keep eating. And she said, finally, at the end, near the end of the day, she started saying all these feelings. And I said, well, were those your feelings? She said, no, I said them out loud. And I had to call that woman who brought him later and apologize because I felt bad later. But it was like all these emotions kept coming up around the donuts because it was this struggle all day.
Oh, wow.
And so, I mean, I'm sharing the story just because it happens, right? And it's like the chocolate chip cookies, but what happens when we, she just kept tapping into her why. I feel like that. I know that if I have one, I'm going to have more than one.
Yeah. As we say, one is too many and 1,000 is never enough.
Yeah. And, and sometimes we will do that. We will, let's change the scenario. She eats the donut and then she eats another one and maybe she sneaks a third one, right? Whatever. Or she sneaks one home because they're so good and all of a sudden you're kind of addicted. And then what happens when you do that? You might feel feelings of guilt or shame, but if again you come back into that body sensation, right? And let's say you haven't been eating donuts for a while because you haven't, but then you feel not good the next day, or you notice you don't sleep, or you notice you're congested, or you're inflamed.
Gross.
Yeah, and you just notice it and you feel it.
Yeah.
Guess what? Instead of feeling like, oh, I'm such a jerk, I ate the cookies or the donuts, instead say, wow, like, yeah. I am so thankful that I am not eating these donuts anymore. And I'm, I did that, but like, I'm kind of glad I did it because I know that is not how I want to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we can, that's what I do sometimes when I indulge and I don't feel good. I think, thank God I did not do that all the time. Good job.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's great. Yeah. So you use the quote unquote relapse or the cheating or whatever to actually bring you back on track. You kind of leverage it.
Yes.
Rather than feeling like, okay, I cheated, I'm a failure, I can't. Well, and saying this comes back full circle to dieting, because dieting, you're either on a diet or you're off a diet, right? I'm on, I was good, I did great, and then I fell off and I cheated. So what we're doing here in the Academy, Mary Sheila, is what we're talking about. We're really not talking about dieting. We're talking about making food choices that support who and how it is you want to be.
Exactly.
And, it does require some conscious choice, and in many cases it requires planning. It requires bringing your intention to it. And it's also not, we were talking about this before we hit the record button. It's not a diet, it's a way of life.
Yeah.
It's a way of life. It's not a diet that like I'm going to go on and then I'm going to go off. And then once I go off, I can just go back to what I was doing.
Exactly. And honestly, you might adapt or adopt a food plan that is maybe even called a diet. But that, so for example, some women in the academy have adopted a food plan that, through my consultations with them and their symptoms, we've determined that, wow, this food plan actually might really honor your unique physiology. Why don't you try this and see if you feel better? And if you feel better, it's like we're putting on the detective hat and realizing, oh wow, I do feel so much better. I'm not in pain anymore. I'm not aching anymore. I'm sleeping better. And oh my gosh, I'm losing weight. So it's a whole thing where sometimes people will try something on, maybe just because it's the latest fad. And that's okay too, because you also might try it on and realize, wow, this really works for me. So it's about trying some, sometimes that food plan might, be a kind of, called a diet, like the paleo autoimmune diet, or, a keto way of eating, or whatever it is, or paleo. But oftentimes a lot of the things that are coming out right now are rooted in helping to heal the body, right? From maybe
heal the body.
So again, it just, and then anything that we're doing requires us to choose. And sometimes we're not even aware of that choice. Like if I walk by a table and there's food on it, and maybe it's in my kitchen, and I just grab it and walk and eat, and I'm not even super conscious that I just ate something, that's right. Or I'm cooking and I'm munching while I'm cooking, I'm still making a choice. I'm just not conscious of that choice.
Okay.
Right. So on the journey, making that choice of saying, like my friend said, oh, I have a choice here. I can eat those donuts or not. And she, struggled with that choice all day long until she kind of exploded in some anger. Right.
Wow.
But
yeah, well, and yeah. So what she was tuning into is what I call anticipatory regret. I want to eat the donut, but I know that if I eat that donut, I am going to feel gross. My pain is going to increase, and I'm going to really not think very well. I'm going to beat myself up, So anticipatory regret, which is actually a good thing. It's not going to kill me.
And that, to me, like I always call those little conversations we have in our head, that's mindfulness in action, right? And even if we say, too bad I'm eating the donut, like it's still, I believe personally, it's still a win that I have that awareness.
That's the beginning, the awareness.
Yeah, it's that awareness. It's that mindfulness of, oh, this is a choice I'm going to make right now.
That's interesting about awareness, because if you actually go a step earlier than awareness, acceptance. So this is a place where that can fuel awareness, is acceptance. I accept that I have this struggle. I accept that it's been really hard for me to make wise, self-loving food choices. And I'm going to forgive myself for that. I'm not going to think I'm a bad person because I struggle with food. It's not who I am. I am not the sum total of my food struggles. Again, going back to the sovereignty of the heart, there's more to me. There's much more to me than that. So acceptance, then here comes the workplace situation and the donuts. Then that's where the awareness comes in, fueled by acceptance. I accept that if I eat those donuts, I'm going to feel terrible. Okay. Then action, the choice. I choose to abstain, or I choose to do it. And then like, okay, here it is. Once again, great. I ate the donuts. Now I feel like crap. All right, good. I don't really need to do this anymore. Bye-bye, donuts. Hmm.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, acceptance, awareness, and action. All right. Well, there is one more. Is there anything else you want to say about the diet? Like why we're not dieting here? Like what the difference is between what we're doing in the academy versus regular dieting? There's one
Well,
piece that I want to add to the tail end of this talk that I didn't mention earlier.
yeah, I mean, one of the things that, even when you're doing the writing about your deepest desire, you can reflect on that whole idea around your big why of what you really want. And I think what's really important is when we're on the journey of accomplishing whatever that is, our goal,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be hard, right? Life is hard. And so even, whether we're like an entrepreneur like you and I are, or when you were in college and things got really, really hard and you wanted to just give up, right? But you had this idea of like this vision of, well, I want to graduate and become, this person in the world. And so I can be of service and do that work. And if you're in a relationship, things get really hard, but you have the vision and you want to continue on, right? So there's always that. And the thing around going deeper than weight loss and really tapping into your why is when you go, when it's just weight loss, when it's just about the diet, we can compromise our way out of things. We
Yeah.
say, well, if I eat the donut, I'll just go for a walk when I get home, or I'll run an extra mile, or I won't have dinner to compensate.
So weight loss, in other words, is not a big enough why. It's not a deep enough why.
It's not a deep enough why, because it's the surface. It's, yes, it's important. I completely know it's important to most people, myself included. But we got to go deeper to that place of really like loving ourselves and deciding and realizing what our deepest desires are.
Well, and that's interesting because that might sound like oh, what do you mean it's not a deep enough why? I really want to lose weight. But
Yeah.
what we've seen with several of the women here, Mary Sheila, is that when you have gone deeper and you've addressed the deeper why, then the weight loss, not always, not 100% of the time, but often you get exactly what you've been looking for, which is I want to lose this weight with ease. Like I want to lose it without thinking about it. I don't, I want to be able to just let it go.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just to say one last thing, one of the women, when we were talking about like a particular food plan way of eating, and I was explaining to her, very beginning, she said, I am feeling a ton of resistance right now because this feels like a diet. And this is where I struggle. I've been here so many times. And so we really talked through, well, for what you're going through, this could help you and eliminate all of those symptoms. So would you be willing to try it because of that?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, yes. And guess what? It's helping her. Her symptoms are diminished and her weight is coming down. So it comes hand in hand.
Right. Nice. All righty. Well, I'm really curious to hear from you all what you think about this conversation. So after you watch this video, I want to invite you to post some comments about what do you think? Is it a diet? Is it not a diet? Does it feel like a diet? Does it not feel like a diet? Does it feel restrictive? Or does it feel like, I'm just making the choices that really support me and I feel freedom in that? So I'm really curious to hear some of your thoughts. I want to come back around before we close, and I'll reiterate this in our community talk on Monday, our community call. So some of what I was saying earlier about looking at the ways you domesticate your genius by being, believing that you're too much or believing that you're not enough. I want to suggest to you that within those places of feeling like you're too much or feeling like you're not enough, there's genius inside of that too. So, for example, um, I'll just give an example from my own experience. You know, I can be very enthusiastic, as a lot of you know, and you know, my personality can get really big, and um, sometimes, like for myself, in fact, I was on a meeting today with someone, and she said, I feel like I've talked too much and I feel like I've taken up too much space. And that's something that I can identify with. Like, I talk too much, I take up too much space. I'm too big, my energy is too big. Um, but what I have come to recognize is that there's a bigger space for my bigger energy. You know, my energy only feels too big when it's bumping up against some kind of self-imposed idea that it shouldn't be this way. But if I lift the lid off of that and say, well, actually, yeah, my energy is big, my energy can get hella big, and let's make it even bigger. You know, there are circumstances, there are people, there are conditions that will favor that and say, yes, come here and welcome. So I want to invite you, when you're exploring these ways that you might be too much or not enough, that that energy also has some wisdom to it that perhaps you haven't fully harnessed yet. And we'll do some guided, we'll do some journaling around this, and we'll do some tapping around it and so on. So, all right, I think I'm complete. Anything else, Mary Sheila?
No, that sounds great.
Great. All right, so we'll see you all very soon. Lots of love. Let your light shine. Didn't you put that up the other day? Let your light shine, let your love flow, let it out. It's time. It's a new decade, and we need your brilliance, quite urgently, in fact. All righty. Talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Adios.